Hi and welcome to my Wuthering Heights reading vlog. It is very bleak, all of the characters are hateful, a load of characters have the same name, a load of them die, and also I do not understand a word of the Yorkshire dialect. Yeah, everybody is just being their usual awful selves, and some of them even worse. I don't know if I'm depressed because I'm reading Wuthering Heights. It probably doesn't help that I'm reading Wuthering Heights. I never really get this kind of reaction to films, but I did have a very strong reaction to this one. Welcome back, or if you're new here, a very warm welcome. It's great to have you here. My name is Sophie, and as there is a new film adaptation of Wuthering Heights coming out very soon, I thought that I would do a reread of Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë and take you along and show you all of my thoughts and reactions to rereading this novel. So I wanted this to be more than just a reading vlog. I wanted to have a go at making this a little bit more of a kind of study reference guide. So I would also like to talk a little bit about Emily Brontë and the time she was writing, and then also maybe a little bit about what is kind of going on in terms of literary devices in this novel. So I just want to clarify that I am in no way an expert on English literature. I did not study it at university. I did some in high school and studied a few different classics, but yeah, I've never studied Wuthering Heights academically. So all of the more academic-y stuff that I'm going to talk about is based on my own research. I just thought it would be nice to not only have a reading vlog, but also have a little bit more content for you. So a little bit more background and some more analysis into the book. So I have read this one before. I can't remember a lot about it. I can't remember when I read it, but it was quite a long time ago now. So I actually have only vague recollections of what happened in this book. So first up, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a background on Emily Brontë and kind of the time that she was writing Wuthering Heights. So Emily Brontë was born in 1818 and was an English novelist and poet. Her only ever published novel was Wuthering Heights, which was published in 1847. Emily was the fifth of 6 children, and the Brontë family lived at Haworth Parsonage in Yorkshire, right on the Yorkshire moors, and their father was a reverend at the parsonage there. So sadly, only a few years after Emily's birth, her mother died. Then very shortly after, her 2 older sisters also died. So this was very much a sad start to life, overshadowed by a lot of death in the family. So left behind were Emily, Anne, Charlotte, and their brother Bramwell. So after the death of their mother, their aunt moved from Cornwall to Haworth to help raise the children, and so the aunt was also a big part of their lives. The Brontë family weren't necessarily poor, but they also weren't wealthy either, and the children were expected to work to make a living. Emily, Charlotte and Anne all worked as either teachers or governesses at one point, but they all really found their greatest enjoyment and satisfaction in writing. So it was actually Charlotte who persuaded her sisters to publish their work. And this was very much a time period where women were not encouraged to publish work, and they had to publish their writing under pseudonyms. So we had Charlotte publishing under Cura, Anne publishing under Acton, and Emily publishing under Ellis Bell. And by December 1847, the sisters had been successful at publishing their work. So Wuthering Heights was published alongside Anne Bronte's work. So Emily was very much a poet, so alongside Wuthering Heights she did also write a lot of poems. So I do have Emily Bronte's complete poems, which I have yet to read, so I would be really interested to read these poems as well after I've read Wuthering Heights again. So at the time that Wuthering Heights was written, it was very much the early Victorian era in Britain, and there would have been deeply religious sentiment. There would also been these gender specific roles, so women would have been very much expected to stay at home and not have any intellectual capabilities, and certainly would not be found writing and publishing books. So there was not only gender roles, but there was also a class system, and there were definitely different roles assigned to different classes of people at this time. And it was also a time where, despite a lot of religion, there was also a lot of superstition surrounding death, and this is very much reflected in the type of novels that were written at this time. So very sadly, Emily died in 1848 at the age of 30 from tuberculosis, and this was very soon after her first book had been published. So who knows what she could have written if she lived longer. But it was very sad for the family as well, because the year before Branwell had died, and then very shortly after Anne also died, leaving Charlotte by herself. And Charlotte did actually make a few edits to Wuthering Heights, so she made the Yorkshire dialect a bit easier to read, but I think that was heavily criticised, so generally the edition that is published the most is the original Emily edition. So what I have read about Emily's temperament is she very much liked to keep herself to herself. She found great joy in going out into the Yorkshire moors, in spending time by herself and writing. And I do just find it amazing how these women wrote these beautiful novels that have endured and stayed with us for so long. So that was a general overview of Emily and the time she was writing. And yeah, I really cannot wait to get stuck back into this novel and give it a reread. So I've started my reread of Wuthering Heights, and I've read the first kind of 6 chapters, and I'm on page 52, so it's kind of a good chunk for me to be able to give you some of my thoughts. So I honestly feel like I haven't read this book before now, because I cannot remember anything. It was quite a while ago now, so I guess I've now grown and maybe I wasn't so invested in reading it before, but it's good in a way because it feels like I'm experiencing it again. But yeah, I've definitely read this before. So my first few observations are that it is very bleak. All of the characters are hateful. A load of characters have the same name. A load of them die. And also, I do not understand a word of the Yorkshire dialect. So it's a good thing that that is only limited to a few sections from one of the servants, Joseph. So in the opening chapter, we meet Mr. Lockwood, who is one of our two narrators, and the story opens in 1801, and it feels a little bit like this could potentially be a journal entry. And I believe that the date actually isn't mentioned a lot throughout this book. You're kind of left to work out what time it is, so it's not told in a linear timeline. We never are told this story through the characters who actually lived it, but rather through other characters, so Mr. Lockwood and then Nellie, who we will meet later on in the next few chapters. So Mr. Lockwood has rented Thrushcross Grange, which is a property that belongs to his landlord, Heathcliffe. So Lockwood travels to Wuthering Heights across the moors to meet his landlord, and he discovers that Heathcliff is not a very nice person. So he is very intimidating and obviously doesn't want any company. But we get to learn a little bit about the property of Wuthering Heights, and Emily Brontë is very much setting the scene and showing us the wilderness already of the landscape, and also giving us our introduction to Heathcliff. So despite Lockwood having a very bad first encounter with Heathcliff, he does vow to return the next day, and then when he does return, he meets Hareton Earnshaw and also Catherine Heathcliff. So he does kind of assume the relationships between these people, but he gets it wrong, and we discover that Catherine, or Cathy, is Heathcliff's daughter-in-law, and then Hareton is the son of Hindley, who we hear about a little bit later on in the story. So Lockwood is forced to stay at Wuthering Heights due to a snowstorm. He can't return home, and Heathcliff is very unhappy about that. He wants to get rid of him, to get him out of his house. But Heathcliff's servant shows Lockwood to this room where he can spend the night, and Lockwood there encounters the journals of Catherine Earnshaw and sees Catherine's name written in multiple forms: Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Linton, and Catherine Heathcliff. And yeah, he discovers her journals and starts to read a few of them. And then when he goes to sleep, he is then haunted by the ghost of Catherine. And the next day, Heathcliff is very unhappy that Lockwood stayed in the room. But once Lockwood tells him that he was visited by a ghost, which he assumes is the ghost of Catherine, Heathcliff is visibly affected by the fact that Catherine's ghost appears and wants her to come back. So Lockwood kind of gets the idea that there is something more to this story, more to this guy, and more to the house. And then he ends up going back to Thrushcross Grange, and he starts talking to his housekeeper, who is called Nellie, and she is the second of our two narrators. So here we kind of set up for the idea that the narrators are not part of the actual story. They haven't experienced these things, but they are telling everything from their experiences. So this kind of gives us an unreliable narrator. And then Nellie starts to tell the story of Heathcliff, Hindley, and Catherine Earnshaw. So we discover that Hindley and Catherine's father one day goes away to Liverpool, and he ends up coming back with this boy called Heathcliff. And Heathcliff and Cathy start to form this very close bond of friendship. They run out free on the moors and get into a lot of trouble. And Mr. Earnshaw, the father, is kind of promising Heathcliff an education, and he's going to provide for him. And Hindley is very, very jealous, very unhappy about this, and takes a real dislike to Heathcliff. So then Mr. Earnshaw does end up dying, and Hindley, who I think he's left, he returns for the funeral with his new wife, and he is now master of Wuthering Heights. And he does treat Heathcliff like a servant and is very awful to him. And then
one day when Catherine and Heathcliff go out wandering on the moors, Hindley says that to his servants that they should just bar the door and stop them coming in. So Catherine and Heathcliff end up going to Thrushcross Grange, which is where they meet the Lintons, and the Lintons are a very well-to-do family. So we meet Mr. Linton, who is the head of the family, and we also meet Edgar and Isabella Linton. And they end up setting the dogs on Heathcliff and Catherine. Catherine gets her ankle bitten by one of the dogs and has to stay at Thrushcross Grange, and Heathcliff goes back home to say what has happened to them. And Catherine is then, it looks like she's going to be staying at the Lintons for a little bit of time. And I think she's really going to experience kind of how the other half live. So the Lintons are a lot more wealthy than the Earnshaws, and I think she's going to experience some of that at Thrushcross Grange. But yeah, so far I am really enjoying it, although I am a little bit frustrated when Joseph speaks, as he speaks in a Yorkshire dialect, which I really cannot work out what he's saying. But yeah, it doesn't really take up a lot of the story, so if you feel like maybe you're a bit worried about that, I wouldn't be, because yeah, it's a very small part of the novel so far. But yeah, I'm very thankful that this family tree is in the front of the book, as it can get a little bit confusing in the start to work out who everyone is and how they're related, as a lot of the names are the same. But yeah, I am really enjoying it, and I'm loving kind of the ghost story element, the atmosphere and the desolation of the moors and the weather taking on a very big character. Oh, and one thing that I should have mentioned was my observation surrounding Heathcliff and the fact that he definitely is not a white character, so I'm not sure why all of the adaptations continue to make him white, except for there is one adaptation where a person of colour is playing Heathcliff, which I would love to see. So yeah, I haven't seen that, but I do need to watch that one. So it specifically says in the text here, he is a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect. We also get this part here where it says a little Lascar, or an American or Spanish castaway, and the notes tell me that a Lascar is an East Indian seaman. So whilst it's unclear exactly what Heathcliff's heritage is, he is definitely not supposed to be white. But yeah, I will just try and get a little bit further through it and then come back with some more thoughts. So we've now reached page 133, and last time we'd got to the point where Heathcliff and Catherine had gone to Thrushcross Grange, and Catherine had been bitten by the dog. So it's now about 5 weeks later, and Catherine has been staying at Thrushcross Grange, and she has turned into quite the lady since she's been there. And on the other side, Heathcliff has had an absolutely awful time at the hands of Hindley. So Hindley has been abusive to him and just made his life a misery. But Catherine has really missed Heathcliff, and she's very happy to return to him. And then the Lintons are invited to Wuthering Heights, and Heathcliff asks Nellie to make him look decent. So it seems like Heathcliff is making an attempt to better himself, but it just turns into a bit of a disaster because Edgar and Hindley go out of their way to humiliate him during this time. So Heathcliff does react with violence, so it causes a bit of commotion between Edgar and Heathcliff. And then it feels really like this is the point where Heathcliff is starting to plot his revenge against Hindley. So yeah, we're going to start to see how that's going to turn out. And then shortly after this, Hareton Earnshaw is born to Hindley and Frances, and very sadly a few weeks after, Frances dies of consumption. And then this is the catalyst for Nellie moving back to Wuthering Heights to help look after Hareton, and Hindley in the meantime has turned to drink to drown his sorrows. So he is becoming a lot worse of a character. He's becoming a lot more bitter, a lot more angry. And yeah, he takes out a lot on Heathcliff. And then at this point, Catherine is 15 and Edgar does call on her a lot. And for her kind of character arc, she's very much coming to terms with the fact that she's going to have to make a choice between Edgar and Heathcliff. And she's very conflicted about this because of her passion for Heathcliff, but marrying Edgar would change her social standing, and it would, in the eyes of society, be a better option for her. So at this point, Heathcliff and Hindley's relationship does deteriorate, and then Hindley threatens Nellie with a knife, so he is really just becoming an absolute awful human being. Then there's also an incident where Hindley drops his son Hareton from the stairwell, and Heathcliff happens to catch the boy, but he's wondering why he did anything to help Hindley. And then this is the point now where Catherine is really struggling with her decision, and she has decided what she's going to do. And there is a scene that takes place in the kitchen between Nellie and Catherine, but unbeknownst to them, Heathcliff is hiding in the corner, so he overhears part of their conversation. So Catherine basically says she's going to marry Edgar, as marrying Heathcliff would degrade her. And it's at that point that Heathcliff walks out, and Catherine is not aware that he has been there. And she ends up continuing her speech saying the famous line, "Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same." And Heathcliff has left by this point, so he doesn't hear this second part to the speech. And then Nellie becomes aware that Heathcliff was there. I mean, it seems a little bit like maybe she did know he was there all the time. But then she tells Catherine, and Catherine is distraught and runs out into the dark and the cold to try and find Heathcliff to tell him the rest of what she was actually telling Nellie. Then she is not able to find Heathcliff and she gets a chill. And then also Mr. and Mrs. Linton both die as well. So this leaves Edgar in charge of Thrushcross Grange. Then after these events, the narrative moves to 3 years later and Catherine and Edgar are married. And this marriage has led Nellie to have to go and be Catherine's housemaid. So she's reluctantly had to leave Hareton in the hands of Hindley. Then we see the return of Heathcliff, and he has changed himself. He has become seemingly a better man. He's got some money from somewhere, which we don't know how he got this money, but it seems like he's maybe tried to better himself, but we do understand that actually nothing has really changed. He's just got money and he's still the same horrible character, but he has really wanting to put his revenge in motion. So he ends up staying at Wuthering Heights, and he is also causing a lot of rift and disagreement between Hindley and Hareton, so damaging their relationship as well. But Catherine is very happy that Heathcliff has returned, and they visit each other quite a lot. But Isabella has also developed this fascination for Heathcliff, and Heathcliff sees this as an opportunity for him to get revenge on Edgar, and I think also make Catherine a little bit jealous as well, so he pursues Isabella. And it's at this point that Catherine is very ill, and Nellie sees it as some kind of hysteria, and she refuses to take it seriously. So yeah, she doesn't really care for Catherine as much as she should be during this illness. And then we find out that Isabella and Heathcliff have been meeting in secret, and Isabella has now run off to marry Heathcliff. So things are not looking good for Catherine, and also it looks like Isabella has made a very big mistake running away with Heathcliff, and I think he's just going to become worse and worse. So yeah, I think this has been kind of quite a key section in the book because we've learnt a little bit more about the society and expectations that are placed upon women in the society, and Catherine having to choose between her passion and what makes sense and what is sensible in society and to better herself. And then we also do see kind of the downfall of some of the characters in this. And it also does plant a little seed of doubt about Nellie. Perhaps she's not as nice as we have been led to believe in the story. And also I feel like it's very much pitting the two different houses together. So almost as if the houses were in conflict with each other. And I think this is really reflected in the characters. And yeah, everybody is just being their usual awful selves, and some of them even worse. But yeah, I thought the scene with Heathcliff hiding in the kitchen and overhearing feels like that's where this kind of trope came from, of characters hearing half the story and then leaving and finding out years later that they were wrong. And yeah, I really thought that was a really interesting device used in this book. And it does kind of force Catherine and Heathcliff apart, seemingly for good. So yeah, this has taken me a little bit longer to get through, but I am still enjoying it. So I am hoping to finish this very soon. There's still quite a large chunk to read. So yeah, I will report back again when I've read some more of the book. So today is Friday the 13th of February. Friday the 13th. I hope that's not a bad sign. But it is movie release day for the Wuthering Heights movie, and it's actually the day that I had planned to get this reading vlog out to you, but life had other plans, and yeah, I am not done with it. I haven't finished reading the book yet, but I thought this would actually be fine because then I could also give you some thoughts on the movie, which I am actually going to see this evening. So I have to get this book finished today before I go and see the film. So I haven't really got a lot of reading done over the last few days. I've been feeling a bit down. I don't know if I'm depressed because I'm reading Wuthering Heights. It probably doesn't help that I'm reading Wuthering Heights, but I guess we could call it some kind of immersion technique, especially as it has literally rained every day of 2026 in the UK. So yeah, it's really felt like I've been living Wuthering Heights myself. Apart from all the hateful characters and the tragic romance. So yeah, I'm going to see the movie and I need to finish the book. I'm a bit kind of freaked out by some of the marketing for this film. I think it's a little bit odd, and actually I think it's kind of put me off wanting to see the film more than actually making me want to go and see it. There's been a lot of this kind of pushing that it's released around Valentine's Day, it's a romance. And there's also this weird stuff that's been going on with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, and I just wonder, literally, what does Margot Robbie's husband think about all of this? It feels like they're very much trying to force these two to show their connection and their romance, and I think it's a little bit overdone. I'm also not expecting it to be a very faithful adaptation at all. Obviously, we know again Heathcliff has been cast as a white character, which is really not reflective of the book at all. But I am interested to see what all the hype is about. So I will let you know my thoughts when I've seen that. But first, we have to get this book finished. So I think last time I left you, we had reached the point where Isabella had run away to marry Heathcliff. Edgar, her brother, had disowned her for this. And then also Catherine became ill. So I am now at about page 200, so I have over 100 pages to go, which I'm hoping is feasible to read before the film. But as I've made such slow progress, I'm not entirely sure I will make it, but I'll see. I'll do the best I can. So I've got a coffee and I'm going to put some Ambiance music on to get me more in the vibe. I did that last night when I was reading it and actually made the story come to life a lot more. I enjoyed reading with music. So the last section which I've read, which has been over the past few days, has actually really got me pretty engaged in the story. It's difficult to say I enjoyed it, as yeah, what happens is not really enjoyable, but I feel like I've really got into what this story is really about, and I've actually enjoyed reading it. So in the last section I've read, Isabella has sent a letter to Nellie basically saying how awful her life at Wuthering Heights is, how awful Heathcliff is, how awful everyone is. She doesn't have the luxuries that she's had at Thrushcross Grange, She doesn't have the luxuries that she's had at Thrushcross Grange, and she's very much living a life that she is not used to with all of these horrible people. So she is very unhappy and she wants Nellie to come and help her do something about it. So Nellie does end up going to Wuthering Heights and sees what kind of state that Isabella is living in. I did really like the touch of adding the letter. It gives this extra layer to the narrative. So we've got these unreliable narrators who are kind of recounting the story, and now we have this letter which is very much from Isabella's perspective. And yeah, I thought that was a really good way to propel the narrative and to give us something a little bit different. So after that point, we've kind of got this part where Heathcliff is being absolutely horrendous to his wife Isabella, but then he's also kind of confessing his absolute devotion to Catherine, who is dying. And there was this really interesting kind of dialogue going on. So Catherine's basically saying, Heathcliff, you've murdered me, you've caused all these problems for me. And then Heathcliff is very much like, well, no, you're making me crazy as well. So there's this very kind of hateful dialogue going on, but at the same time, they're confessing their absolute devotion and love for each other. So I will read you a couple of passages because I did find them very interesting. Let's see if I can find them again. So this is the first chapter of part 2, and it's this scene that I think I've really been invested in this one. So Heathcliff had knelt on one knee to embrace her. He attempted to rise, but she seized his hair and kept him down. I wish I could hold you, she continued bitterly, till we were both dead. I shouldn't care what you suffered. I care nothing for your sufferings. Why shouldn't you suffer? I do. Will you forget me? Will you be happy when I am in the earth? And then she goes on to say, I only wish us never to be parted. So she is very horrible to him, but also kind of confessing her love. And Heathcliff comes back with these things like, you know that I could as soon forget you as my existence. And then Catherine says, this is not my Heathcliff. I shall love mine yet and take him with me. He is my soul. And we just kind of get this back and forth between hatefulness and love. And it does show kind of how toxic their relationship is. And then, spoiler alert, Kathy dies. And this really got me. So it says, about 12 o'clock that night was born the Catherine you saw at Wuthering Heights. So now we have another Catherine. A puny 7-month child, and 2 hours after the mother died, having never recovered sufficient consciousness to miss Heathcliff or know Edgar. So yeah, it's not nice. And then we do have this quote here, which I think is probably going to be one of my favourite quotes. And it does kind of show Heathcliff's love for Kathy, regardless if we think it's toxic. So he says, be with me always, take any form, drive me mad, only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. O God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. Love it. So yeah, I'm really loving the vibe right now that we're having in this book. So Kathy dies in childbirth, and then we find out that Isabella has run away from Heathcliff, and he hears that she is pregnant as well. So he has a son, and Isabella stays away in the south for a number of years. And we now have kind of the next generation. So we have Hareton, who's Hindley's son. We have Catherine, who's Catherine's daughter. And then we now have Linton, who's Heathcliff's son. And I just think this thing with Kathy is probably gonna make Heathcliff fall off the cliff. And yeah, I think it's really gonna make him a lot more hateful than he already is. And I think that's kind of what this next section is going to go into. We're going to see the next generation, what happens, and we're also going to see how Heathcliff's probably going to want to pursue some kind of revenge. It looks like he wants to get his son Linton to come and live with him, but Edgar is very much trying to keep his Catherine away from Heathcliff, and also I think he wants to keep Linton away from Heathcliff, as is Isabella's wishes. So yeah, I think it's going to take some kind of dark turn. But I did find the narrative quite interesting in this. So we've obviously had Lockwood and Nellie, and then we had Isabella's letter as well. But in this section, there's a part where Lockwood is actually recounting Nellie's narrative. So we can see very much how unreliable all of these narrators are. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. So yeah, kind of having a good time with it, despite the horrendous stuff that's happening. But yeah, I kind of feel like I'm really getting into the novel now. So I just have to get it finished today. But yeah, the weather is awful here. There's not much going on. So I'm just gonna sit with my coffee, with my Wuthering Heights music ambience, and just get through it. So it's a few days later now, and I am happy to say that I have finished my reread of Wuthering Heights and also have seen the movie. So it was a little bit of a rush to get the book finished before I went to see the film, but I did end up finishing it in time, so that was great. So before I get on to chatting more about the film, I think I'm going to start with a bit more of a summary of where we left the plot last time, and then I want to do a little bit of a recap of some of the key themes, key parts, and some of my favourite parts about this novel. So last time we got to the point where Catherine had died in childbirth and Heathcliff and Isabella had got married. Isabella had sent a letter to Nellie to say that she was very unhappy with Heathcliff, and the next bit kind of starts where Cathy's died, Hindley has also died, and then the plot kind of moves to 12 years later, and Edgar receives a letter from Isabella to say that she is dying and that she wants him to come and get Linton and keep Linton with him at Thrushcross Grange. She doesn't want Linton to end up living with Heathcliff. So Edgar goes to collect Linton, and in this time Cathy ends up going to Wuthering Heights and she meets Hareton there, and Nellie is very unhappy about this as Edgar has really tried to keep young Cathy away from everything to do with Wuthering Heights, all of the people, and definitely doesn't want her to end up meeting Heathcliff. So Nellie tells Catherine to lie to her father about this and not say anything about her meeting with Hareton. So Edgar comes back with Linton, and young Catherine does take a liking to Linton, and she starts to get to know him, but he isn't there very long. I think it's only a few hours that Linton is at Thrushcross Grange when Heathcliff sends Joseph over to collect him and bring him back. Edgar realises that there's nothing that he can actually do to prevent this from happening, so he says, fine, Linton can go and live with Heathcliff, but we will take him over to Wuthering Heights in the morning when he's rested, as Linton's described as very much a sickly child. He's also described quite effeminately as well. So Nellie ends up taking Linton to Heathcliff, and it's clear from the first kind of meeting between these two that Heathcliff doesn't care at all about Linton, and Linton's life is going to be miserable at Wuthering Heights. So Cathy is quite disappointed that Linton is leaving, as she started to like him. So then there's a little bit more of a time jump, and then Cathy is 16 and she does end up meeting Heathcliff when she is out for a walk on the moors. And then Heathcliff invites Cathy back to Wuthering Heights, so she ends up going there and she finds out all about the various relationships between different people. And she also discovers this plan that Heathcliff has to have Linton and Cathy get married so that he can inherit Thrushcross Grange should Linton die. As due to the fact that Edgar had a daughter and Isabella had a son, the rights of the property would automatically go to Isabella's son Linton rather than to young Cathy. So Cathy then returns to Thrushcross Grange and she tells her father all about what she's discovered and her encounter, and her father says that she can't have anything more to do with Wuthering Heights and she needs to stay away from Linton. But Cathy does find a way to communicate with Linton and she sends him letters and the two communicate this way. Then again, while Cathy's on a walk, she encounters Heathcliff, and Heathcliff says that Linton is brokenhearted because Cathy left and hasn't returned to see him. So Cathy again ends up going to Wuthering Heights. I think there's several times where Cathy goes to Wuthering Heights, but then there is one time she goes with Nellie, and Heathcliff ends up imprisoning Nellie and Cathy in Wuthering Heights, locks them in and won't let them get out. And there is a violent altercation between Heathcliff and Cathy. So Heathcliff does attack Cathy, and then he's really trying to poison her against her father, so saying that her father actually probably doesn't care and will be better off without her. So yeah, he's just kind of continuing his reign of chaos and wanting to poison everybody and everyone's lives around him, and get revenge on everyone. So eventually they do escape, I think at this point, maybe this point or a bit later, but Cathy and Linton do get married. Nellie returns to Thrushcross Grange and finds that Edgar is dying. Cathy does make it in time before he dies, but then Edgar dies, and then Linton does end up dying. And it's at this point where we go back to Lockwood and his narrative, and he is basically leaving Thrushcross Grange for a bit. So he goes away, and then when he comes back, he learns that Nellie is now working at Wuthering Heights, and Heathcliff has actually died. And we see that we've got Cathy and Hareton left. And there was this really beautiful bit where Lockwood comes back and the gate is kind of open and flowers are being planted in the garden. So it really seems like Hareton and Cathy are trying their best to get away from all of this abuse and all of this darkness that has invaded their lives. And I think they're trying to learn from that. And it does feel a little bit like there's a bit more hope again. So that's really the plot points. I have to say I had a really good time reading this book, despite the dark and horrible things that happen. But I've been really thinking a lot about it since I finished it. And actually, I really think I want to do another reread very soon. So I don't normally annotate my books, but this book kind of compelled me to annotate. So I did go through with pencil and mark anything that I found interesting, but I would now like to do a deeper dive and get some highlighters and pens, which is very unlike me for books. But yeah, I have multiple editions, so this will be my annotation edition. So yeah, I hope at some point to go back through this, look at all the things I underlined and then maybe expand on that. And I really should have kept a notebook as well when I was going through this. So I might just read it for just enjoyment and for deeper analysis, and I'm not going to track any of the pages or anything. So yeah, but this has actually really led me to want to pick up more classics and do this, as I had a really great time. And yeah, I don't have any degree in literature, but it has really made me want to study a little bit more. So I probably put together some kind of self-study course for myself. And yeah, I just want to do this with more classics. I'm going to pick a few more to do that with, and especially I would like to focus on the Brontë sisters as well. And then maybe at some point soon I will also pick up the complete poems by Emily Brontë. So in terms of things that I observed during my read, again, I'm going to say that I'm not kind of qualified to do academic discussions about literature, but this was just some things that I picked up when I was reading it. So firstly, it's the kind of narration style. I thought that was very interesting. So it's a dual narration. So we get Lockwood, who is telling his story. Then we get him hearing Nellie's story of the events. And there is a point where Lockwood is then trying to recount what Nellie says to him. So that's kind of even more unreliable. But yeah, it's just the theme of the unreliable narrator. Like, what is Nellie actually doing? Like, what did Nellie actually have to gain out of some things that she's done? So I think that was a really interesting way to do the narrative rather than have these characters talk about their own story. So there was also a lot of use of letters as well. In particular, Isabella's letter, which is, again, another interesting element to the narration style. And I have to say, I really loved Emily's writing. I thought it was beautiful. And then we do also get kind of the dialect from Yorkshire, from Joseph. It's not throughout the whole book, but there is quite a lot of large sections in this dialect, which I still can't really understand. But yeah, I thought that was also interesting to kind of show the culture of the place. And then I guess the main thing is really the Gothic element. So this is very much a Gothic novel. So we get the dark and stormy, moody place setting. We have these manor houses, Wuthering Heights being very run down and feels very ominous. And then we have Thrushcross Grange, which is showing a little bit more of the other side of life. And then we have the supernatural elements. So we have the ghosts. We have a lot of death and devastation in this book as well. There's also a lot of mystery surrounding the characters and the relationships, And also we do have kind of dreams and nightmares kind of appearing a lot as well. And also madness from some of the characters. And also I did really like how the seasons are kind of mentioned. So we do have a bit of spring and summer, but they are very short sections. It always seems to be that summer is now over and now autumn is coming. And then the large sections happen in autumn and winter. And the book opens in winter as well. So I really like how that's framed as well. Really keeps us in this dark and cold, windy, desolate setting. And we have Heathcliff, who's very much a Byronic hero, and this is something that I have recently learnt about. So it's taken from Lord Byron, and the Byronic hero is kind of like the anti-hero. They are arrogant, they're outcasts, and they do horrible things. They have self-destructive tendencies, but they also have this kind of magnetism and mysterious element about them. And Heathcliff as well is often referred to as a goblin or a ghoul. So again, he's kind of turned into this monster. And that kind of also links into the race and class aspects of this novel. So Heathcliff is very much an outsider. He is an other. He is really degraded because of his skin colour and his unknown heritage, and also because of his low class status. So that's one of the main themes of the novel, and yeah, that's the very driving force of why Heathcliff is treated so badly. And also we see how Cathy is torn between Edgar and Heathcliff very much. She doesn't know like who to go for, but she has to go with Edgar because she says that Heathcliff will degrade her, and also for her standing in society, she ends up believing that she has to pick Edgar to kind of better herself as well. So very much a lot of class politics as well in this novel. There's also themes of abuse and generational trauma. So is Heathcliff the way he is because of how badly he's treated, or would he have turned into this character anyway? And then I do also really like how Emily has made the female characters seem a little bit kind of boyish. So they seem a little bit wild and wayward, which at the time would have been very strange for female characters. So I love the way that she has done that. And also, she's kind of shown that it doesn't matter in this novel if you're female or male, they're still horrible characters. So yeah, that was quite an interesting aspect as well. And also she seemed to use Catherine's kind of madness as a device where Catherine could kind of manipulate the narrative because of her illness, which was very interesting as well. This would again have been a time where women's role was very defined. And I think that's why I like the character of Catherine, even though she's a horrible person, she is very strong-willed, strong-minded, and I wonder if Emily saw a lot of herself in Catherine. And it does also feel as well that a lot of the death in this book is maybe from personal experience. So Emily did lose a lot of people around her. There was a lot of death, so perhaps that kind of came into this novel as well. But yeah, I honestly had such a great time with the reread. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of the film. I never really get this kind of reaction to films, but I did have a very strong reaction to this one, and I absolutely hated this film. Yeah, which is a little bit sad because whilst I was expecting not to enjoy it, I didn't think it would be this bad. And a lot of it, I have to say, is to do with the faithfulness or lack of faithfulness to the novel. But even if I take it away from the novel, it was very boring. Not really a lot happened plot-wise. The film's been marketed very much with Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi and their kind of chemistry, but I didn't really feel that they had that much chemistry in the film, to be honest. So yeah, it was dull for me. I really didn't enjoy it. There was a lot of kind of plastic in there as well, so the costumes seemed quite plasticky. There were also kind of bricks and walls that were very reminiscent of the London Underground. So yeah, I don't think it really hit for me. I mean, I did quite like Charlie XCX's soundtrack. There's a few songs that I did enjoy, so that was, I guess, a positive. But overall, I hated it. I think my main complaints really are the lack of faithfulness to the novel at all. I know it's an adaptation, but at some point an adaptation has to be some level of faithful to the source material to be an adaptation. So I know she put Wuthering Heights in quotation marks to show that it was an adaptation, but yeah, that's not really enough. Yeah, most of the characters are missing, so Hindley is not present at all, which is really the main reason why Heathcliff ends up becoming how he is, because of the abuse that he suffers from Hindley. So Hindley's not there. Also, there's no next generation of the characters, so no Hareton, no Linton, and no young Cathy. So again, that kind of misses the whole point of the novel, is that this trauma is carried through the generations. So yeah, it completely missed that, and not to mention also the fact that they completely miscast Heathcliff. So I do like Jacob Elordi, but I don't think he is the right fit for Heathcliff. They should have really gone with someone who is a person of colour, and I think that was a very big mistake from the producers. And it just feels like the director had not even read Wuthering Heights. It really felt a little bit more fan fiction, and I'm just wondering, why bother calling it Wuthering Heights? Why not take it as inspiration and make your own original story, original film? So yeah, I hated it. And I understand that everybody has their own opinions. Some people do love it. And yeah, I don't want to take that away from them, but personally, it was not a good film for me. And my main concern is really what that's going to do for the legacy of the novel. I'm worried that a younger generation are maybe going to think that they understand or know what happens in this novel based on that film, and it is completely wrong. So yeah, that is my rant over. So that is the end of this vlog. I hope you've enjoyed it. If there's any classics that you would like me to read and do this kind of style of vlog, then please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I am interested to hear what you also think about Wuthering Heights, if you've read it or if you haven't read it, and if you've seen the film or if you're planning to see the film, and what your thoughts on the film are. I'll see you next time. Bye.